The storm came without warning, turning the autumn sky black as midnight, though it was barely past noon. Ilara clutched her basket tighter as rain lashed against her face, the loaves of bread wrapped in cloth growing heavy with moisture. She should have turned back when the first drops fell, but the coins she'd been promised for this delivery would feed her and her grandmother for a week. Thornhaven Castle loomed ahead, its black spires piercing the turbulent clouds like accusing fingers. The guards barely glanced at her as she stumbled through the gate, water streaming from her cloak. They knew her face, the baker's delivery girl, too insignificant to pose any threat to the vampire lord and his cursed household. Inside, the castle was a labyrinth of shadows and flickering torchlight. Ilara had been here dozens of times, yet the place never felt familiar. It breathed with a strange melancholy, as if the very stones remembered grief. She hurried through the corridors toward the kitchen, her worn boots squeaking against the marble floors. That's when she took a wrong turn. In her haste to escape the storm's chill, she'd mistaken a servant's passage for the main hall. The corridor grew narrower, darker, until she found herself before a heavy oak door she'd never seen before. It stood slightly ajar. Ilara knew she should turn back, but something drew her forward, a pull she couldn't name, like a half-remembered song. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The chamber was vast and circular, lit by hundreds of candles that cast dancing shadows across walls, draped in black velvet. At the center, on a raised dais, lay a glass coffin. Inside rested a young man, pale as death, his hands folded across his chest. Even in eternal sleep, his beauty was startling, dark hair framing aristocratic features, lips that might have smiled once, long ago. Prince Damon, the vampire king's only son, cursed into slumber for 50 years. Ilara had heard the whispers in the Cret village, how the prince had been struck down on the eve of his coronation, how no healer or mage could wake him, how King Valerian had offered kingdoms in exchange for his son's life. 50 years of silence, 50 years of waiting. She approached without thinking, her hand reaching out to touch the glass, but her foot caught on the dais step. She fell forward, her palm landing not on cold glass but on warm flesh. Somehow, impossibly, her hand had slipped through a gap in the coffin's seal and touched the prince's bare wrist. A jolt of energy shot through her arm, blue-white and crackling. Ilara gasped and jerked back, but the damage was done. Beneath the prince's pale skin, a faint pulse of light traced through his veins. His chest rose barely, but it rose. A breath. The first in half a century. "What have you done?" The voice was thunder and ice. King Valerian filled the doorway, his crimson eyes blazing with an emotion Ilara couldn't name. Fury, hope, terror, all at once. Behind him, guards poured into the room, but he raised a hand to stop them. He crossed to the coffin in 3 swift strides and pressed his fingers to his son's throat. His expression shifted, ancient features cracking with something like wonder. His heart, it's beating, stronger than it has in decades. A thin man in physician's robes rushed forward, producing instruments from his bag. "Impossible," he muttered, examining the prince. "My lord, his vital signs are improving. The curse, it's weakening." All eyes turned to Ilara. "Who are you?" the king demanded. "No one, your majesty. I deliver bread from the village. I got lost in the storm. I didn't mean to. Lost." The king's laugh was bitter. "Nothing in this castle happens by chance, girl, especially not this." He studied her with unsettling intensity. "What's your name?" "Ilara, my lord. Ilara." He tasted the name like poison. "Do you know what you've done? For 50 years, we've searched for a cure. Witches, healers, blood mages, none could break the curse. And you, a baker's girl, stumble into this room and wake him with a touch? I don't understand. Neither do I. But you're not leaving this castle until we do." He gestured to his guards. "Take her to the east wing. Give her a room, food, clothes. She stays near my son. Whatever magic she carries, it's the only thing keeping him alive." The days that followed blurred together in a haze of suspicion and wonder. Ilara was given a chamber near the prince's, finer than anywhere she'd ever slept, but it felt like a gilded cage. The court nobles watched her with hostile eyes, none more so than Lady Morgana, the king's advisor, who made no secret of her distrust. "I think that she's a deceiver," Morgana hissed during a council meeting Ilara accidentally overheard. "No common girl could break a curse that has defied our greatest minds. She's either a spy or a witch herself." But the king wouldn't hear it, not while his son's heart continued to beat, growing stronger each day Ilara spent in the castle. They made her sit beside the prince for hours. At first, She remained silent, uncomfortable under the watchful gaze of guards and physicians. But gradually, the absurdity of the situation made her brave. She began to talk to him about the weather, the village, her grandmother's herb garden. She read to him from books in the castle library, stories of adventure and faraway lands. Sometimes, she sang the old songs her grandmother had taught her, melodies that felt older than memory. And Prince Damon responded, not with words or open eyes, but with small signs. His fingers would twitch when she entered the room. His breathing deepened when she sang. Once, when she'd been reading a particularly sad passage, she could have sworn she saw a tear track down his pale cheek. Alara found herself talking to him as if he were awake, sharing thoughts she'd never spoken aloud. "I think you can hear me," she whispered one evening. "I think you're trapped somewhere between sleeping and waking, fighting to come back. I don't know why I can help you, but I'll stay as long as you need me." His hand moved then, just slightly, as if reaching for hers. It was King Valerian who finally gave her answers. 2 weeks after her arrival, he summoned her to his private study. The room was lined with ancient texts and artifacts that hummed with residual magic. He held a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. "Do you know the name Mirethel?" he asked. Alara frowned. "My grandmother's name is Mirethel, but she's just an herb woman in the village." "Just an herb woman." The king's smile was sad. "Your grandmother has kept secrets, girl. This journal belonged to Salethia, the witch who cursed my son. She was a healer once, powerful and kind. She fell in love with my brother, King Aldrich, before he took the throne." He opened the journal, his fingers tracing faded ink. Aldrich loved her too, but he was weak. When the nobles discovered their romance, they were horrified, a future king consorting with a witch. They gave him a choice: give her up or abdicate. He chose his crown. The king's voice hardened. And when Salethia wouldn't leave quietly, when she threatened to expose the nobles' own dealings with dark magic, they arrested her, called her a heretic, burned her in the town square while Aldrich watched, and did nothing. Alara's blood ran cold. She'd heard stories of the burning, but never the woman's name. She cursed the royal line? She cursed my nephew Aldrich's son, who would have been the next king. She stood in the flames and screamed that the air would sleep as stone until one of her own bloodline chose to forgive what was done to her. But Aldrich died without producing an heir, and the curse fell to my son instead when he came of age. The king's hand trembled. We searched for Salethia's descendants, but they'd vanished. We thought the line was extinct. My grandmother, Alara whispered. She's Salethia's daughter. And you're her granddaughter. You carry the witch's blood, diluted but still potent. The curse recognizes you. It responds to you. He closed the journal. You're both the key and the lock, Alara. You can save my son or doom him forever. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She went to the prince's chamber, dismissing the guards with a confidence she didn't feel. Alone with Damon, she finally let herself weep. Your family killed my great-grandmother, she told him. Burned her alive for loving the wrong man. And now I'm supposed to save you? She laughed bitterly. The curse wants forgiveness. But how can I forgive something that happened before I was born? How can I absolve sins I never committed? The prince's fingers moved, stronger this time. His hand opened, palm up, as if offering something or asking for something in return. Alara took his hand. The moment their skin touched, the world shifted. She gasped as visions flooded her mind, not memories, but echoes. She saw Salethia in the flames, not screaming in hatred, but weeping in heartbreak. She saw King Aldrich watching from his throne, his face a mask of anguish. She saw the curse taking shape, born not from vengeance, but from a grief so profound it had torn a hole in the world. And she understood. The curse didn't demand punishment, it demanded healing. It wanted someone to acknowledge the pain, to witness the injustice, and to choose love over the cycle of hurt. But understanding came with a price. The curse, sensing its purpose might be fulfilled, fought back with desperate fury. Damon convulsed in the coffin, his body arching as black veins spread across his skin like cracks in porcelain. The candles flared and died, plunging the room into darkness. Alara screamed for help, but her voice was swallowed by a wind that came from nowhere, howling with 50 years of imprisoned rage. The king and his physicians burst in, but they could only watch in horror as the curse consumed its host. Damon's skin turned gray, his lips blue. The pulse Alara had awakened began to fade. "It's killing him," the physician shouted. "The curse is fighting the cure." Alara refused to let go of Damon's hand, even as the dark magic burned her palm. "It's not enough," she gasped. "Breaking the curse isn't about me forgiving. It's about—" She turned to King Valerian. "You need to forgive them. Selethia and Aldrich both. The curse was born from their unresolved pain, from guilt and rage left to fester. You're the only one left who can release it. How can I forgive the witch who destroyed my son? She didn't destroy him, grief did. Betrayal did. The curse was never meant to be punishment. It was a test. Could love survive what hate had done?" Alara met his eyes. "Can you forgive what happened, even if it's unfair? Even if it hurts?" The king stared at his dying son, at the boy who had slept for 50 years because of choices made before he was born. Slowly, he knelt beside the coffin. "I forgive you, Selethia," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You loved and were betrayed. You suffered and sought to make the world feel your pain. I forgive you." He placed his hand on his son's chest. "And I forgive my brother, Aldrich, for his weakness, for choosing power over love, for letting fear rule him." His tears fell on Damon's face. "And I forgive myself for not being able to save my son." The words hung in the air like a prayer. Then, slowly, the black veins began to recede. The wind died. The candles reignited, their flames burning steady and bright. Alara felt the magic shift, felt the curse's grip loosen. But it needed one more thing, the final piece of forgiveness that only she could give. She closed her eyes and reached deep into herself, into the inherited pain she'd never known she carried. "I forgive you too," she whispered. "Great-grandmother Selethia, I forgive you for letting your pain become a weapon. I forgive King Aldrich for his cowardice. I forgive the nobles who feared what they didn't understand. I release all of it. Let it end. Let healing begin." Power surged through her, bright and terrible. She felt something tear loose inside her chest, some ancient knot of inherited trauma, finally unraveling. The magic poured out of her, through her hand, into Damon. The dark veins vanished completely. Color returned to his skin. His chest rose and fell with deep, natural breaths. And his eyes opened. They were silver, bright as starlight, and they found Alara immediately. His lips moved, forming a single word, "You." But Alara couldn't hear him. The world was fading, growing soft and distant. She'd given too much of herself to break the curse. The last thing she felt was someone catching her as she fell, strong arms holding her close as darkness claimed her. When Alara woke, she was lying in a small bed in an unfamiliar room. Sunlight streamed through a window, warm on her face. She sat up slowly, her head aching with a dull throb. An elderly woman was sitting in a chair nearby, knitting. "Where am I?" Alara asked. "The chapel guest house, dear. You've been sleeping for 3 days." The woman smiled. "How do you feel?" "Strange. Light." Alara frowned. "I feel like I've forgotten something important, but I don't know what." "Sometimes forgetting is a mercy," the woman said gently. "The healer said you'd been through quite an ordeal, though you came to us with no injuries, just exhaustion." Alara tried to remember, but her mind was blank. The last thing she recalled clearly was delivering bread during a storm, and then nothing. Weeks seemed to have vanished from her memory. The woman helped her to her feet and gave her a small pouch of coins. "This was left for you, anonymous donation. Should be enough to start fresh, wherever you'd like to go." Alara returned to the village, but something had changed. Her grandmother, Mirathel, was different, lighter somehow, as if a burden she'd carried for years had finally been lifted. She welcomed Alara home with tears of relief and wouldn't speak of where she'd been, only that she was glad Alara was safe. Months passed. Alara used the mysterious coins to open a small shop selling herbs and remedies. She had an inexplicable talent for healing, for knowing exactly which plants would cure which ailments. People came from distant villages seeking her help, and she gave it freely, feeling a deep satisfaction in easing others' pain. She should have been content, but sometimes she'd wake from dreams she couldn't remember, her hand reaching for something or someone who wasn't there. It was a spring morning when he walked into her shop. He was tall and elegant, dressed in fine clothes that marked him as nobility. His dark hair fell across silver eyes that seemed to recognize her, though she was certain they'd never met. He moved with the grace of a predator, but his smile was gentle. "Alara," he said, and his voice sent shivers down her spine. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" Something flickered across his face. Pain, longing, understanding. "Not anymore, but we knew each other once. Very well." He stepped closer, and she caught a scent like midnight and rain. "My name is Damon, Prince Damon of Thornhaven. You saved my life, though you don't remember it." "I've never been to the castle," she said automatically, then hesitated. Had she? There were those missing weeks. "You broke a curse that had held me for 50 years. You gave everything to free me, including your memories of what happened." He took her hand gently, turning it palm up. There, on her wrist, was a mark she'd never noticed before, a small scar in the shape of a thorn. "This is all that remains of the magic you carried. The curse is broken, the debt paid. You're free." Alara stared at the mark, at this beautiful stranger who spoke of impossible things. "Why tell me, if I don't? Remember, maybe it's better." "Because I remember," Damon interrupted softly. "I remember every word you spoke to me in the darkness, every song you sang. You sat beside me for weeks and told me I wasn't alone. You fought for me when no one else could." His thumb traced the scar on her wrist. "And I wanted you to know that someone is fighting for you now, even if you can't remember why." Tears sprang to Alara's eyes, though she didn't understand them. "I don't know what you want from me." "Nothing. Everything. Time." He smiled sadly. "I want the chance to know you again, if you'll allow it, to let you know me as I truly am, awake and living in a world you gave back to me. No curses, no magic, no depths, just a possibility." Alara looked into his silver eyes and felt something stir in her chest, recognition, perhaps, or the echo of a bond that had transcended memory. She didn't know this man, couldn't recall his face or voice, but her heart knew him somehow, beating faster in his presence. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted. "Neither do I," Damon said. "Love rarely makes sense." "Love?" She laughed nervously. "You don't even know me." "But I will," he promised, "if you'll let me. We have time now, Alara. All the time in the world. I've been asleep for 50 years. I can be patient for 50 more if that's what it takes." She should have sent him away, should have dismissed his story as madness, but instead, she found herself asking, "Would you like some tea?" His answering smile was radiant. "I would like nothing more." As Damon settled into a chair in her small shop, as Alara prepared tea with hands that somehow knew exactly how he liked it, she felt the missing pieces of herself beginning to align. She didn't remember the curse, or the castle, or the nights spent reading to a sleeping prince, but she remembered the feeling of being needed, of fighting for something greater than herself, of a love that had grown in darkness and defied death itself. The memories might never return, but the love remained, patient and persistent, waiting to be rediscovered. Outside, spring bloomed across the valley. In Thornhaven Castle, King Valerian looked out from his tower at a kingdom, finally freed from the shadow of an old curse. And in a small herb shop in a humble village, a prince and a healer began the slow, beautiful work of falling in love for the second time. Some stories end with a kiss, others end with a promise. This one ended with a beginning, with tea shared in quiet companionship, with laughter over stories half remembered, with the gentle unfurling of a love that had survived magic, memory, and death itself. The curse was broken, but the magic, the real magic, the kind that lives in human hearts, that remained steady and eternal, a flame that no darkness could ever quite extinguish. And in that small shop, surrounded by herbs that healed and herbs that harmed, Alara looked at the prince who had crossed kingdoms to find her again, and thought that perhaps, just perhaps, some things were worth forgetting if it meant you could experience the joy of discovering them anew. "Tell me everything," she said finally. "Even if I don't remember, I want to know." Damon took her hand, his thumb resting gently on the thorn-shaped scar. "It begins with a storm," he said, "and a girl who was brave enough to reach through darkness and pull me into the light." As he spoke, Ilara listened, and though the memories remained lost, her heart recognized every word as truth. Some bonds, it seemed, ran deeper than memory. Some loves were written in the soul itself, indelible and eternal. The curse of Thornhaven had ended, but the love story that was only just beginning.